I've always felt like museums are one of the least useful community lot types in The Sims 4. I like the idea of going to a museum with my Sims, but in reality, when you visit them, there's just not that much to do there. You show up, you click on a couple paintings for them to view, maybe you try to paint something, but all the easels are already occupied, so you can't, and then I guess you just go home because there's nothing else to do. Both of the base game worlds have a default museum, and in Willow Creek, it's called Municipal Muses. I use this lot a lot more like a wedding venue than I use it as a museum. I have had many weddings in the past in this garden over here. Here's a quick look at what the EA museum looks like. It's kind of a cute building. I love this like arched front section. It also comes with a piano and a bar, so it's kind of halfway there to being a wedding venue already. And inside, it's really simple. It's got a couple bathrooms. It's really dark in here, and they've just got some artwork on the walls. When you build one of these, the lot requirements are pretty simple. You need the basics like a sink, a toilet, and a trash can, and then you just need some wall decor and a couple sculptures. And it also requires you to put one easel in. I have always been really annoyed by this easel because every time I try to come here to paint, somebody else is already painting there, or they did try to paint there and then gave up. So there's just a half-finished painting by someone else that you can't get rid of. So all of that to say, I don't really come here very often, and yet for some reason I decided to spend hours rebuilding the Willow Creek Museum. I thought it might be kind of fun to try and lean more into a science museum angle, because then we have an excuse to put things like the observatory, a telescope, even that giant microscope, and we can still put in artwork and sculptures, but we can also add in the fossil collection, the crystals, and all of those things to help fill it out. So let's dive right into the game, and I'll kind of walk you through what I built. Now, we did have a couple of restrictions on this one. Obviously, it's a museum, so I was trying to include all of the required objects, but also I wanted to make it with just the base game. I was hoping to build something actually usable and downloadable for you, and I know that I have a tendency to go a little bit overboard in terms of pack content, so this one has no packs. It's only the base game, so anybody that has The Sims 4 can use it. That did mean that we were a little bit limited in a couple of things that might have been cool additions. Just as one example, there's this really cool T-Rex skeleton head that's in a glass case from Get Famous. Obviously, I couldn't use that here, but we definitely made do without it. I think it still turned out really well. I also don't think that it looks like a base game build. The base game is definitely lacking in some ways, but it also has a lot of genuinely really decent, really cool stuff, and I made use of it here. I think it worked out pretty well. Now you can see it actually kind of has a similar shape to the original museum. We still have that like rounded arched front section. I kind of mirrored it in the back. There's almost like a sunroom in the back with like a glass roof space and stuff. And I was trying to go for like these classic, fancy, old museum shapes. I just went to the British Museum when I was in London last month, and they have like the most classic of all classic museum facades at that place. It's like the big columns across the whole front. The whole thing is made out of stone. You know, that sort of vibe is kind of what I was trying to mimic. Obviously, keeping in mind that it's The Sims 4, so our options are a little bit limited there. We can't really do all the cool column things that I dream of because we just don't have the ability. We're stuck on a weird grid. We also obviously can't really do a pediment. You know, when these fancy buildings have all those sculptures and like this part of the roof, that's called a pediment. We've got a couple sculptures in the base game. We do not have any sculptures that would look like that, so we definitely cannot achieve that in this game. And overall, the whole first part of this video is a lot of me trying to figure out what I was going for. There's a lot of experimenting with different shapes of fountains and experimenting with columns and different fences. I was just trying to see, how is it looking? How is it working? How are we gonna lay out the lot? Obviously, right now we have the whole thing kind of scooted over to the left, and we've got a big grassy area on the side. I would really like to have a garden still on this lot. I think I like that a lot about the original one. And I want to put a dedicated wedding space because I know myself, I have my Sims get married here all the time. So it's nice to have a dedicated place to just have a wedding arch already there. I didn't put anything on this lot for a reception, so there's not like a bar or any tables or dance floors or anything. It's mostly just a wedding arch and a couple of chairs, but if you wanted to have your Sims elope here, it is a good spot to do it. Now in the front, I found this astronaut statue and I sized it up 1, and I thought that was like the perfect item to put right in front of the building because it kind of fits that space museum thing that we're going for. So I felt good about that part, the statue part of the front, but the rest of it I was not so sure about. So you're about to see me being indecisive for a long time in this section of the video. I really liked the columns on this top floor here. I just didn't really know what to put in between them. I wanted to have a door maybe to the balcony, and then I wanted to have like a banner or something, because you might see that in real life, like banners announcing some sort of exhibit or something, but we just don't really have banners like that in the base game. There's a couple things from like high school years that might work, but obviously we don't have that pack right now. So I ended up scooting it back. I had the columns on the wall originally. I scooted it back and had the columns forward one, and then I just put windows behind it, and I think that looks a little bit better. So it's not a functional balcony, it just looks like one. I wasn't sure if I should have put like an easel or a telescope out there. I ended up putting a balcony on the side of the building, so we still have one. I just didn't want to have anything blocking the view of the front, I think. And then I went digging through debug, and I found a couple of really cool items. I found this giant debug plane, and I put that on the inside. I ended up using that and hanging it from the ceiling above the staircase. I feel like you could totally see that happening in a real life science museum, so I put that in there. I also found these like flag items. They kind of look like exhibit signs, and they have a bunch of different swatches. I think they came with the Sim Sessions event when they had that weird like concert series in The Sims 4 a couple years ago over the summer. So we have a bunch of cool base game debug items from that, and I used those signs here. I put some in the front, and I also put some kind of around the inside. Then I found some actual flags. I found some cool light posts that have flags hanging from them, and I just piled them all in the front of the lot because I wanted to come back to them later. You can't copy from debug by default. You can if you have a mod, but I don't use Better Build By or like really any mods at all, so I don't have the ability to use the eyedropper tool. So when I want to use stuff from debug, sometimes I'll just save a big pile of it and I'll shove it in the corner with the intention of coming back for it later. So that's what all of that is in the front. Don't be alarmed by that. I swear I'm gonna fix it. It's not as bad as it looks. And then the back of the lot is sort of similar to the front. I kind of mirrored the same thing with the columns, but obviously it's a little bit bigger back there because it has that sunroom type of space. And I ended up putting a couple of doors so you can access the back through those doors back there. I really wasn't sure how to do the side. I didn't know like how big I wanted it to be, how I wanted to lay it out. All I knew is I wanted to have an observatory. So I was trying to figure out some sort of way to put that observatory upstairs. It's really weird. It's very big and it kind of barely fits on top of that balcony, but I managed to make it work. And I think it was well worth it because I never get to use that item. So anytime I can put it somewhere, I'm glad to have it, because you can't very well put that in your own backyard very often, and it doesn't really fit on most community lots, so it's cool to have a dedicated space for it, even if it kind of looks like I shoved it in the corner on the roof somehow, but it looks cool from the front, I think. You can really see what I mean now though, with like how so much of the video was just me trying to figure out the layout. It was so much back and forth of like, where should the landscaping go? Where should the columns go? How should the front facade look? And I was just back and forth so much with it. I did actually live stream this build first on my Twitch channel, so if you want to watch the full thing back, I can link it down below. I post all of my streams onto my second channel called More Simsie, and I also of course live stream on my lilsimsie channel on Twitch, so I'll put all those links for you. But sometimes when I'm being indecisive like this and I watch the speed build back, I'm like, oh my goodness, this must have been so frustrating to watch live because we just watched it in about 7 minutes. Everybody else watched it in about 40. So they had a way worse time than we just did. That is not really a good way to plug my own streams. I'm not really selling it right now, but I swear it's fun. We have fun over there. And actually, speaking of Twitch, I'm gonna be at TwitchCon next weekend, which I'm really excited about. I don't know how many of you are gonna be there, but if you are, I would love to say hello to you. I've got a meet and greet on Sunday at TwitchCon. I will surely come back with stories next weekend about how it went and everything. I am a little bit nervous about it because The Sims is releasing 2 kits while I'm at TwitchCon. They come out on the Thursday and I get there on Wednesday, so that's less than ideal. It'll be fine, like it's just a kit. It doesn't really matter that much, but I still want to make a video overview like I always do. I just don't really know how that's gonna go, trying to like film it from my hotel room. I've never filmed a video on my laptop before, like a gameplay video. I've used my laptop to stream a bunch, but usually just for baking streams, not for gameplay streams. I've been testing it and it seems like it should be okay. I've got The Sims 4 all installed on there and ready, but I don't know how long it's gonna take to upload from the hotel because I don't know how the Wi-Fi is gonna be. So basically, when the packs come out on Thursday, it's gonna be a slightly slightly slower video than normal. When I film it from here, I'm able to be like a lot quicker with it. I might even have to post it the next day, but I just figured I should warn you now. So you're not like, Lil Simsie, why aren't you posting a kit video like you always do? It's just unfortunate timing. It's gonna be a nursery kit and an art studio kit, which I'm actually pretty excited about both. I did see they both leaked, but I've been trying to avoid looking at the screenshots. I saw it in my Instagram feed and I was like, quick, scroll away. Because when the kits leak, I don't really want to see the leaked photos because it's kind of like the entire kit is then spoiled. This might be kind of backwards because when expansion packs leak, it feels like that's a bigger deal because it's a bigger pack. But usually it's just parts of an expansion pack or like the name. And even when that happens, there's still a lot left for you to find out when the pack actually comes out. But with kits, it's just the build items. So if you see a leak of the build items, that is the whole thing. And I quite like getting to play with them for the first time and like see everything for the first time in game and like have a genuine reaction for the YouTube video. So that's why I kind of try to avoid the kit leaks because I just want to experience it next week. It is tempting though when you see a gameplay screenshot and you're like, oh man, I kind of want to go back and scroll up and look at that, but I try my best to avoid it. Anyway, with the build now, we have finally mostly finished the landscaping and the layout of the main front of the building. Now I'm kind of pausing for a second to think about the garden area. I really went back and forth on this a lot. I wasn't sure how I wanted it to be. There was a lot of talk about doing like a hedge maze in there, and then I felt like it might be kind of a waste of, oops, I just pulled my headphones out. I felt like it might be kind of a waste of space to have a hedge maze, so I decided to put a gazebo instead and then have the wedding arch in the middle of that gazebo. I'm just doing layout right now. We will come back and landscape it at the very end. I don't like to do terrain paint when I can avoid it. I'll reword that. I don't like to do terrain paint at this point of the build when I can avoid it because I like to do it last just in case the game decides to glitch. There's a lot of terrain paint bugs where you place it down and then you reload the lot and it's all just gone. So I didn't want to spend time doing terrain paint now and then have to redo it later. So I always save it for the very end of the build. And we are finally moving on to the inside to start thinking about layout. And the first thing I did was try and figure out how the bathrooms would be. I wasn't sure with the staircase if I wanted to do one big one in the middle or if I wanted to do them on the sides of the building. Also, my cat just got here. This is all over the place right now. But I settled for a big main staircase right in the center. We've got like some fancy columns. We've got all these beautiful arches around it. And then I hung that plane up in the ceiling directly above the staircase. I really loved doing this. I thought it looked so cool. I even went back through debug and I found these little poles basically, and I sized them down and used it to make it look like they were hanging from the ceiling. It was kind of hard to find something that made sense, but I found this big metal pole and I just made it small and then attached it to it, and I think it looks so realistic like that. It's such a simple thing, but it looks cool. And don't worry, your Sims can still get around it. They can walk underneath the plane up the stairs and stuff. It's really high up, so it's not in anybody's way. It's also debug, and a lot of the debug stuff is like not a real item. Even with the debug landscaping, if you put it down in a lot of places, your Sims can just walk right through it. Oh, okay, bye Snap. Because it doesn't have any real object restrictions to it. Sometimes the game thinks its hitbox is like this big, but it's actually like this big too. So debug's just weird. That's why they're all in debug. It's like they didn't finish these things because they're just out in the environment. So it's not like a real finished item. I'm doing the bathrooms now. And in this room, I kind of tried to make a fake toilet stall. I ended up using half walls for this because the room is medium wall height, and then I put some tall half walls in there. So there's still full privacy, like you can't see above your Sim's head, but it looks more like a toilet stall. There were some questions in my Twitch chat when I did that about like, does it work like that? Is it possible? And yeah, that's totally fine. You can put doors on half walls, and it also still thinks that your Sim has privacy because it's closed off. I wish that we had a proper toilet stall in the base game. I think it's kind of weird that we have toilet stalls from university and high school years, but not a base game one, as if like everywhere doesn't have toilet stalls in real life. It's so common in community lots and we just don't have that. Calling real life public spaces community lots is so ridiculous. I was literally trying to say like, oh, you know, a grocery store would have a toilet stall, and I said community lot in reference to a grocery store in real life. Oh, that just reminded me that one time I did this interview for like a home magazine. I know that sounds really weird, but sometimes they want to write articles about The Sims stuff, and people reach out to me and I'm like, I'll talk to you about that, I guess, that's fine. It's a cool opportunity. And she was asking me because I had made some videos about like decorating my real life kitchen in The Sims, or using The Sims to decorate my real life bedroom, which a lot of us do. We'll like build our new apartment in the game before we move in. So I was kind of talking about that to her. And then I made this comment about community lots, and she looked at me like, what are you saying? And I realized you cannot talk about community lots as if that's like a normal term that gets used in real life. No one like goes to the park and says, oh yeah, I went to a community lot in real life. You don't refer to the real life museum as a community lot. Anyway, let's talk about the actual interior, because we were finally starting to lay out all of the different spaces. I don't know if this was a good idea or not, but it's too late because I already did it. But I put platforms, and then I put all of the display items on top of the platform, and then I closed them in with fences, because the base game has this kind of cool rope fence, which I think makes sense for a space like this to have like rope fences around the different art pieces. This is kind of a mess, so just give me some time to figure it back out, okay? But the main thing I wanted to put in here was, oh my gosh, the cat keeps coming back and forth. I wanted to put the microscope, but I put it on the side and I didn't close it off all the way with the rope. I roped off everything else, but I left one tile open with the microscope because that way you could go there and still use the microscope if you wanted to. So it looks like they've got this big microscope just on display, but also it's accessible for you, the player, if you want it to be. I was digging through debug and looking for all those cool space prints. I got a bunch of crystals and fossils and stuff to put upstairs. I put microscope prints behind the microscope. I was actually having a lot of fun trying to figure out what to put on the walls in here. Now, one important thing to note is that the microscope and space prints, I don't think count as artwork for the game because they're not classed as wall art. So for the lot type, you need to have sculptures and you need to have wall art, but those space ones are not wall art. So I had to put other art pieces in other places. It was fine because there's a lot of wall things that kind of worked. There's like a framed book, there's like some magazine frames, and I was using all of that kind of stuff because it still fits with the space and science theme. Looking back on this in hindsight, there are some parts that I'm not super excited about. I tried to put a bunch of items on these little tables because there are a couple cool things. There's like a typewriter and a glass case, and I loved that. And I put like a little mini plane, a little mini bus and stuff like that too, but something about it just looks a little bit weird. So I don't know if it was a bad idea. I was trying my best to fill it all in. And then in this back room where we have like the cool arch and all the big windows, I made this into like the fine art exhibit. And so I put all of the real paintings in here. We have a lot of music themed paintings, a lot of those pretty base game ones. And then I also put a bunch of easels in here, and I made sure to have more than one because I am so sick of coming here and not being able to use the easel because it's already taken. I also put a half wall in the middle of it just so I'd have more of a reason to have more wall space to put more paintings on. At first I had built it like a box in the middle, and then I was like, oh yeah, I have a glass roof, so I can't just have the box. So I did a half wall instead. I feel like I don't often use really tall half walls in my builds, and I did that a lot in this one, so that was kind of a fun excuse to experiment with them a little bit more. And then I was able to hide the easels and the canvases kind of behind the half wall, so if you just come right in, you can look at all the art and not see all the painting, but if you come further in, you can use the paintings, you can watch them paint. Maybe they do art classes back there in the back half of the room. I don't know. That's obviously pretend. In real life, they might. They don't do that in The Sims. I feel like at this point, though, you kind of have more of a feel for what I was going for when I was building this, so hopefully it's kind of coming together and making sense. I always feel a bit silly when I'm starting the speed builds and I'm like, okay, here's the plan. It's a mess right now, but trust the process. And this is where the trusting the process starts to pay off. It actually seems like a museum at this point. This is a serious question. Do you think other YouTubers re-record stuff when their cat walks in front of the camera, or do they just deal with it? Because I tend to just deal with it, but then I think, is this like unprofessional? In my head, it's just a speed build. I'm just rambling anyway. If Snap wants to take part, that's fine. Like, she's welcome to hang out with us. And half the time, I don't even notice, and then I look back and there's just a tail walking back and forth in front of me, and I don't even react. This is what happens when you live with 3 cats. Do you see what I mean? There's just cats everywhere all the time here in my house, so I'm just used to it. Like, I don't even think about it anymore. Okay, we did skip ahead a tiny bit in the speed build though, and that is because I may have forgotten to press start record again, but only briefly. I decorated a small kids room section downstairs in that final empty room, so we'll come back to that and I'll show you the finished product at the tour at the end. And now we are moving upstairs, and this is where there's more of like a collections theme going on. So up here, I put a bunch of the crystals. I also decorated a whole fossil section person because, you know, when you're playing The Sims and you go digging around looking for those dig spots out in the environment, and you can find crystals, you can find those little My Sim trophies, you can get those little smooth round rocks that if you open them, you get a fossil from. So we might not have a big giant T-Rex skull from Get Famous to put on this lot, but we do have little fossils. There's like a leaf imprint and like a plumb bob imprint and things. Again, I'll show you them in the tour, but I feel like that fits really well for this style of build. It makes sense to have fossils in the Science Museum. I also think that it's possible for your Klepto Sims to come and steal these things. So if you were trying to finish the fossil collection and you were perhaps missing an important one, or maybe if you wanted a really fancy crystal so you could make yourself a really nice Crystal Creations item to cheat your needs with, maybe just make a kleptomaniac sim and have them come and visit the museum and just take what they need. I don't think you can take it if you do not have that trait, but if you need to steal, you're welcome to. And actually at this point, I was thinking about maybe trying to put a glass fence around the platforms they're on display on, but I didn't like how any of the base game glass fences looked. I kind of liked the idea of trying to pretend that it was encased in glass like it would be in real life, but the base game doesn't really have the right kind of thing. Maybe the Get Famous fence could have been better, but obviously I didn't have that for this build. And there's also not a top on it, and I think it might have been weird to just have a glass fence but no top. So I left it out, and now we are finally moving on to terrain paint outside. So we're gonna try and decorate that little garden space. So back here, all I knew is that I wanted to have a little pathway through all of those different arches, and I knew I wanted to have the gazebo, and I also kind of wanted to just fill everything else in with lots of plants. I wanted a fountain and just flowers everywhere. I did also put some garden pots there because I thought it'd be kind of nice to have a slight community garden aspect. And if you wanted to, I have been known to put things like death flowers or like the other rarer plants in those little pots on community gardens, because sometimes you just want to get one easily and not have to worry about trying to like make it yourself. I also put a little telescope out here and just like a picnic table and a couple things to fill in space. This would probably be a cute place to take screenshots, or maybe to bring your Sims to get engaged, because there's so many flowers everywhere. It'd be kind of cute to have them stand there and propose. Look at me, I'm literally always trying to think of ways to make Sims builds more useful, especially with the museum. I'm like, okay, how can I make an excuse to come visit the museum? I need to be better about it because I literally never come here. Not everything needs to have a specific use, Kayla. Sometimes you can just tell a story and have your Sims go and visit a museum, okay? Sometimes it's just a cute museum date. It doesn't have to have more meaning than that. All of the flowers on this lot are pink. I don't know if that's bad. And that's very much my style of landscaping, is to put the same color landscaping everywhere. So I have a couple different types of pink flowers, but in the end, they're all pink flowers. So I'm sorry if you hate it, because I know I do that every single time. I think it looks pretty like that though. And it kind of matches the low-lying pink flowers that we have in the front of the build, because I put some kind of smaller ones in those front planter boxes. And with that, we're pretty much done. We're just wrapping it up and putting some last minute touches, some dirt terrain paint around, some last minute lights and stuff. And of course, the wedding arch and the little wedding chair setup. I wasn't sure what direction to put the wedding arch, because I thought about putting it facing the opposite way. And then I was like, is it weird to have the path behind the wedding arch, because the edge of the lot is right there and there's just going to be Sims walking behind you? So is it better to have the arch face the museum? I really kept changing my mind, but I decided I liked it facing that way because it faced kind of a cliffside. And with that, my friends, we are finally finished, and I'm gonna pop back into the game and give you a tour of the build, and then also show you how to find it on the gallery. So of course we built this on the base game Municipal Muses lot, and on the gallery it's called the Willow Science Museum. Of course it is base game and it's kind of expensive, but hopefully not a concern because you don't have to pay for this one yourself. And this is what it looks like from the outside. So a couple of my favorite parts here, we have these beautiful fountains, which you can't really tell because I don't have a sim here, but they are functional. They've got pretty water. I put a little bit of grass in the front to kind of open up some of the space. We've got our huge statue and the flowers underneath. Over here on the right side, this is that little park area that I was telling you about. I might start there just to show you it. We have that little wedding arch, and this is what I meant by it having a pretty view of the cliffside. This is not a bad spot to have your Sims get married. You could come and sit over here and eat if you wanted to. And even back in the way back, we have some more places to sit and eat. We've got some tables. We've got a couple grills over here, so you could come out and do your homework if you wanted to. I like how this landscaping in the back looks a lot. I think that the back of the building in general is pretty cool. I also love this kind of pointy glass roof section. We've got like a skylight almost in the art room, but that's pretty much the overview of the exterior. And then when you come inside, You walk in through this front door and I've got these cool banners here, almost like exhibit advertisements. And then over here on the side, this is that microscope that I was telling you about. So you can see we've got one section of the rope open, so your Sims can still get back there and use it if they want to. They build their logic skill from that. We've got a couple little things on display. There's some more artwork. We've got sculptures, more knight statues. And down this way, we have the bathroom. So you can come in here and you've got 2 separate toilets and a bunch of sinks. I didn't put things like a changing table in here. I would have loved to, but this is from Growing Together and not the base game, so I can't. I point that out because I got a lot of messages in my Twitch chat about that, and I was like, I'm so sorry, we don't have a base game changing table. But anyway, over here on the right side, I did actually end up putting in a vending machine, so if you need to get food here, you can, and you can just buy it instead of having to grill it yourself. We've got kind of like a transportation exhibit over here, and I also on this side put these like book things. These are from Debug. It's a stack of books, but it looks kind of like science-y pamphlets almost. So I put those there kind of as a nod to the Science Museum too. And then over here on this side, this is the kids' room. So I put a couple things, like maybe they have a frog display. We've got a bunch of science tables. I've got a couple art tables and kind of a reading nook. Maybe the museum hosts like kids events. But mostly I just wanted to do that because then you have a place to come and use these skill building items. Let's be honest, it's better to have the Sims start a fire here than in your own house. So let them use these science tables instead. And then in the way back, this is that art room that I was talking about. Oh no. Those were not glitched when I built this. You saw it in the speed build, it was fine. Rounded walls are so buggy, it's so annoying. But in here, there's just a bunch of art on the walls, and then we have kind of that like art section with the easels in the way back. It's funny because I built this before the art kit got announced, and now I'm like, oh man, it would have been cool to have those things back here. But of course it's not out yet. And then upstairs, we have that amazing plane that I was telling you I hung up. And then over on this side, this is the fossil section. Now I did size these up. By default, they're this big. I made them really big. And I've got a whole display of fossils. We've got a bunch of science prints. We've got a bunch of space prints back here. I even put one of the element collections. We've got some crystals on the wall. We've got a bunch of crystals on the table, more crystals on the wall, and also like a cool crystal print. And this is the door that you go through to access the space section. In hindsight, it might have been better for me to swap these and have the space prints over here, but I've got a better wall for them back here because it's more space. It just would have been cool to have the space prints next to the observatory. But it's too late now. It's already finished and it's on the gallery. But that, my friends, is our fully completed base game science museum. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. I really liked this one. I thought it was pretty cool. And I can see myself replacing it here and using it more than the base game default one. I also have a base game library that I made to replace the library a couple houses down, couple lots down, this one. So let me know if I should build a new gym and a new bar, because I would be totally down to make all of these over and have a full set of base game lots to replace them with. And with that, I'm gonna end this one right here, and I will catch you all tomorrow. Okay, bye everybody. I'm glad Snap made an appearance. I feel like she hasn't been on my desk during a video in a while. She's in my office all the time when I stream. We have a cat cam almost every day, but she hasn't shown up on YouTube in a bit.